Welcome everyone, and today you're joining me to talk about the new progress part of the Be Active Wales Fund. With me to answer some of your questions about the fund and how the whole thing will work are Owen Hathaway, Assistant Director at Sport Wales, and Kerry Richards and Richard Lawrence from the Sport Wales Investments team. Well, Owen, we'll start off with you, and can you perhaps set the scene and explain how and why this new funding has been put in place by Sport Wales?
Sure. So it was always the intention, really, that we would mirror in the return to sport guidance in some ways, start staggering the Be Active Wales Fund and open up new strands of it when the opportunity arose and when it's appropriate to do so. We started with the Protect Fund, and that was put in place at the peak of the lockdown to ensure that we were supporting those clubs in immediate financial risk. We moved on to the Prepare strand, which has been really crucial to supporting clubs to think differently and to be able to develop return to sport which is safe and responsible in line with the guidance. We're now at the point really that we're looking a little bit beyond that initial scope, and we've recognised and listened to the sports and clubs that have come in for funding, but the need to be a bit more broader in our funding to address some of the things we previously haven't been able to support through Protect and Prepare. And I think the timing really is a reflection of listening to those sports and hearing what they're telling us. And it's also the other consideration is that whilst we're going into local and national lockdowns, that Protect and Prepare funding is still there, it's still operational. So we are still ensuring that we are supporting clubs in immediate need and a return to sport and activity. But now we're adding this additional element to really broaden the way we can put funding into the sector and help them think both in terms of how they deal with COVID, but actually longer term as well, in reimagining the way sports are going to be able to operate in future.
And if I can just follow up on that, what exactly will you be looking for in these applications?
So the applications will have to detail how they contribute into one of three key areas of focus for the fund. Those are tackling inequalities, so how an application may support participation or representation for underrepresented groups, Black and minority ethnic groups, women and girls, areas of deprivation and so forth. And a full list of some of the things we'll be looking for will be part of the website guidance. Second is sustainability, so how a club or an organisation are going to become more resilient in future, how the funding is going to provide support for a club's ability to operate in the long term. And then finally, innovation. The pandemic is a real crisis, but within that crisis, there's a bit of an opportunity here. So we're looking for applications that are bold, that are daring, thinking outside the box, recognising that we may have to do things differently, or maybe they've just seen a way of developing things differently because of the way they've operated over the last few months, and challenging sports to look at how they deliver a future-proofed offer that's going to be really beneficial to the participants they work with and engaging new and different participants in future.
Kerry, I'll come to you next. When someone makes an application, how much information will they be expected to include on these three areas in their application?
So applicants will obviously need to clearly demonstrate how and why they feel they are directly impacting on one or more of the three key criteria areas. With that in mind, our decision panels within Sport Wales can only work from the information provided on the application form. As such, if the application form lacks sufficient detail, it naturally stands less chance of being supported. In terms of the application form itself, it's a combination of drop-down boxes and free text boxes. And I think it's important to sort of state that there is no one perfect way to complete an application form. And I guess an applicant has to find the appropriate balance between quality and quantity. Obviously, there's a little bit of proportionality here in that if it's a very low-level grant, a couple £100 perhaps, or £300-400 for one small element, arguably you don't need to put as much as you would for a significant 5-figure grant award, but it's finding a balance between quality and quantity.
Many people, Kerry, might see this as a development grant. What's different about this fund this time around?
There are aspects of this fund which are similar or have parallels to the development grant. However, we feel that the criteria for the Progress strand is broader, and we also feel that the criteria will encourage greater innovation, as Owen said earlier, within sport, and also perhaps to reflect the new and additional challenges presented as a result of COVID-19. So yes, there are similarities, but it is not Development Grant Mark II.
And if you can just tell us briefly who can and can't apply for the fund, and what if the club or activity has already received a Be Active Wales grant already this year?
Okay, so as with the existing 2 strands of the Be Active Wales Fund, namely Protect and Prepare, Progress is only open to not-for-profit organisations. In addition, the fund is not open to clubs, organisations or associations that are linked to educational establishments, such as schools, colleges or university teams. However, on the final point, Shauna, the applicants already in receipt of a Protect and or Prepare award since July can apply for Progress funding.
Richard, I'll move on to you next. What happens then when an application comes in? Will you be asking for feedback from partners like you have been for the Be Active Wales Fund so far?
So as with all Sport Wales grant applications, they're all made online on our system. Once submitted, we aim to assess every application within a month of submission. However, sometimes this process may take longer depending on the amount requested and obviously people's workload internally and externally. Because we will, adding on to that, we will be involving all partners on applications. We will ask for them for feedback to help shape decisions. And as such, we recommend that anybody wishing to apply for a Progress application contact their relevant partner organisation, whether that be their national governing body or their local authority sports development team, or other support networks that they may have that will be involved in Sport Wales. We highly recommend they talk to them before submission to get some additional help and guidance on the fund, really.
Mm-hmm. One other question we've had is, can you give us an idea of the timescale you'll be working to? But I guess you've kind of answered that already, but in a nutshell, it's pretty flexible, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, what we'll try to do is try to assess and get decisions to applicants as quickly as possible. That is our aim. That's what we want to do. Within a month is a maximum that we feel that we'll be working towards. This will obviously change depending on the application, the amount requested, whether partners are able to feedback quickly enough, you know, just internally, workloads and annual leave, things like that, you know, just day-to-day running of the organisation. But in a nutshell, 1 month maximum applicants should hear by.
Oh, and it's such an uncertain time for all of us with lockdowns and so many unknowns at the moment. It might be a bit more, I can imagine it is more difficult for clubs to start and finish their projects. Have you guys factored that in with this new fund?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will have expectations for clubs to start to spend that funding when they've received it. And we'll also expect clubs to complete the spend within a timely period. And that will be led a little bit by the nature of their applications. So, you know, smaller scale applications may be spent immediately, other longer term or larger sums may need more time to be developed and implemented. That being said, of course, we're acutely aware, as you say, we're living in uncertain times. Things have generally not gone smoothly through 2020. So we recognise there are complexities at play here in terms of what clubs and organisations will be planning. The key thing is that applications and applicants make sure that Sport Wales are aware of any difficulties they may have, any delays, and that's done at the very early stage, so we can look at any potential issues that may arise. But we've got to obviously recognise that flexibility within the parameters we are able to do with public funding. But as long as there's an open dialogue about any problems that do occur, hopefully we can resolve them.
Kerry, I'll come to you next. Will this be the only grant available for community sport, and is there a cut-off date for the Progress Fund?
Yeah, so at present, Sean, the Active Wales Fund with the 3 strands will be the only avenue for community sport funding for the time being, possibly up until the end of the financial year. In terms of a cut-off for applications, we are noting Friday, February the 12th. With the financial year end in sight. So again, you know, the later people apply, the harder it might be to process applications with financial year in mind.
Thanks, Kerry. And I'm not sure who's the best person to answer this last question, but so feel free, anyone can jump in. But what if a Sport Wales partner is unsure or has any questions about this fund?
I think the first point of contact for clubs and organisation will be the detailed, frequently asked questions that we put together. Hopefully any questions that a partner or an applicant may have will be covered off in them. We've tried to think it through from their perspective and cover all eventualities. For those partners working directly with us as an organisation, so governing bodies of sport, national partners and so forth, then have a conversation with the Sport Wales team that you work so closely with, have a consideration around what best can be put in place to understand this fund, discuss with us at the investment team if needs be, so we can have a coordinated response to the guidance that you were giving out to your clubs, and certainly challenging the networks of sports that you work with and the clubs that you work with to ensure that they're thinking through those key 3 areas of what this fund is focused on. Any other issues, obviously there is an online portal for people to put questions to, and we'll pick them up ad hoc where it needs to be. But a thorough reading of guidance, looking at those FAQs, I'm confident we would have addressed many of the concerns people may already have.